Suspended last year for that description. Okay, it's not the issue is that's going to happen symptomatic. All the nurses are getting together. Now you're back to teach us protocols. No, but it's off after. Yeah, these folks. Then she came back to me and the other nurses. This is, I don't have time for foolishness. This is foolishness.
I do. Yeah. I can share.
That's Chris actually. Sure. Say hello. First start. So Tom. So two, yeah, we're good. Mics are live. Is your Zoom unmuted? Okay, good. You're good.
Maybe good.
You can use this if you'd like.
Sure, thank you. Good evening. It is 6:01 and we are going to call this meeting of the Mont Vernon School Board to order. My name is Sarah Lawrence and I'm the school board chair. To my left is Stephen O'Keefe, school board member, and Kristen Clark, our other member here this evening. We do have two members of the school board who have called in because they're unable to be here this evening. Jessica Hinckley is on the phone, as I believe is Peter Eckhoff.
Not yet.
Oh, not yet. Peter is dialing in. Our first order of business this evening is to discuss the FY22 reopening plan. So as you may know, if you watched the SAU board meeting on Thursday evening, the SAU board did have a chance to get together and hear the reopening plan on Thursday that was presented by our superintendent. The board at that time did make some amendments to the plan and overall recommended passing down that plan to the individual boards. So Amherst was able to meet last night and discussed the reopening plan, made some decisions for their district. This evening, we have the opportunity to discuss the plan. And I believe Sauhegan is meeting Thursday night.
Correct.
Also to discuss the plan. So I'd like to ask our board members, how would you like to proceed? Would you like to have Superintendent Steele just do a quick overview of the plan as submitted on Thursday night so that we can hear? I'm just looking for visuals. Yes. Okay. So Adam, would you be kind enough to review that plan? Give us some highlights.
Sure. Not sure if folks can hear me, so I'll use this. So the reopening plan that was reviewed by the SAU board last Thursday and then the Amherst board last night is similar in function to last year's plan in that it is a 5 color-coded status level system for how to mitigate against COVID-19. The plan has red, orange, yellow, green, and blue status levels and is based on several metrics to help us decide which status we will be. The most important status or the most important metric is the number of cases in the local school, so our students and staff. The second is availability of vaccination for a population of people. As we know, vaccination is not available for those under 12 years of age. The next is the rate of active cases in the town per 100,000. This is really a metric that measures how many cases are in the town of Mont Vernon. The next is the test positivity rate by public health region for both antigen and PCR tests to see how many, what the positivity rate looks like. And then the final factor is the vaccination rate by town. So with all of those factors and with their current metrics right now, we can say that in Mont Vernon, as of yesterday, I haven't checked today, there were 0 cases in the town of Mont Vernon right now. Is that still the same? Which tells us that there are 0 school cases right now because all of our Mont Vernon students live in Mont Vernon. Vaccination availability is not available for the students in the school. The rate of active cases per 100,000 in Mont Vernon is also in the blue status because it's a very low amount in town with 0 cases. The test positivity rate by public health region is 6.5%, which is in the orange category. And the vaccination rate by town in Mont Vernon is just under 52%. So all other things being equal, that suggests that we start school in the yellow status level, mostly because of the vaccination availability. One could argue that with those metrics that Mont Vernon could start in the green status, but it's in my judgment, starting with yellow, making sure that the first few weeks of school go by with no run-on cases in the school, and then relaxing to possible a green status would be the best course of action. The difference between the different status levels, the thing that is boiled down to the most common topic of discussion is the use of indoor masks. The yellow and orange status required the use of indoor masks. The SAU board voted to remove the requirement for indoor masks in the yellow status. And so for that reason, the school as of this moment would start, if adopted by this board, would start in the yellow status and not require the use of indoor masks. There are several other smaller interventions and mitigations that are included. The most important one is for students who are not comfortable attending the in-person environment. We are partnering with Hvac to offer courses through their program for students who would be supported by a local interventionist that would be federally funded and would support those students in their Hvac courses while still remaining connected to the Mont Vernon Village School in some way. Those are the highlights, Madam Chair. I'd be happy to answer any questions the board might have.
So thank you. I'll just open it up to the board for questions of Superintendent Steele and the plan at this time. Mr. O'Keefe.
Madam Chair, can I move that we open up the floor to public comment and come back to our discussion?
I'm open to that, sure.
Is that acceptable?
Absolutely. So seeing that we do have some members of the public here, if you have not attended a board meeting before, I'd just like to remind you that there is a process for commenting to the board. What we ask is that you approach the microphone, that you state your name and the town you live in. Then you can have about 3 minutes for comments this evening. If we do have a little bit of extra time, you can of course come back and make a second comment. But we would like to give everyone the opportunity to speak once first. And then if you have an additional comment, you can come back to the mic and address the board. The process is not a dialogue, just so that's clear. It is the public stating their comments to the board. So we will not be able to answer your questions, but we will certainly take whatever you have to say under advisement when we do have a discussion. Anything else to add? Okay. So if anyone would like to make a comment, we're going to open up the mic at this point for public comment. So again, you can just approach the microphone, state your name, and we're happy to hear you. And thank you all for coming.
Hi there. Is this working? My name is Corey Kineska. I'm a resident of Mont Vernon. My daughter is a student here, and I first just want to thank the staff, the teachers, and school board, of course, of helping keep our children safe last year. I think that you did a commendable job, and I'm really grateful for it. I think there's one thing that everybody here can agree on, and that's that masks are. Sure, sorry. How about now? I think there's one thing that everybody here can agree on, and that's that masks are a divisive topic, right? Regardless of what side you're on, it's challenging. Anyone, myself included, can look online and you can find all sorts of information about whether masks work, whether they should be used in schools. But there's just so much to cut through there, and it's so difficult to know what you can trust, right? And I'm sure that all of you have heard lots of people presenting their case, throwing different facts out there, and we're not experts. It's very difficult for any of us to know like what to do based on this information. Luckily, I mean, there are experts out there. There are people who have spent their entire life studying infectious diseases. There's the people at the CDC, and these people, they've read all of these comments that you're hearing. They've read all of these articles online. And in their expert opinion, they think that there should be mandatory masks in school. And so I think that opinion should weigh a lot heavier than whatever I could find online or any random article that we could find anywhere. I think a lot of the arguments against it is that, yes, this is a free country. People should be allowed to raise their kids however they want. And that absolutely should be the case. When you're at home, you can do whatever you want. You can raise your children however you want. But when you're in a shared public space, it's the job of the school, it's the job of the school board to keep our children safe, right? It's anytime that you're in a social space, there are laws, there are rules to keep people safe. You don't allow children to bring a bomb into school. The same reason why anytime that's something that might be affecting others, you would have rules to keep them safe, and I think that's important. So, in my opinion, I believe that the school should have mandatory masks for students at yellow level. I think that's part of what kept them safe last year, and I think that they were happy doing it. I know my daughter was; she didn't mind it at all. When everybody was doing it, it was just normal, and they were fine. And I think in closing, just if even one student in our school, right, gets sick, gets hospitalized, like that's on us. Like heaven forbid, like if a student dies from this, like no amount of regret will let us ever come back and change our mind here. So I feel like we should do everything we can, everything in our power to not have to live with the regret of what we could have done here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you so much. You're welcome to come on up.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, thank you.
Anna Barrett. I live in Mont Vernon. And my third daughter will be a sixth grader this year. She is very excited to come back to school. She stayed home last year and we had Christina Anderson, who was excellent. Both my daughters had Christina. And if there was an option for her to be at home right now and still have Christina, that's probably what I would choose. But I understand there was a decision made out of my control that Hvac is the option. And I can't live with that because I want my daughter to have her excellent teacher, because that excellent teacher has made a huge impact on my daughter. And also she has an IEP because she had a skull surgery at 2 months old. So she has Mr. Blake, and he's another huge asset of this school. So I do want her to come back to school, but I don't have a mask on. I feel like I should have one on when I'm saying this, but I'm vaccinated, and Grace is my daughter, who's a sixth grader, is not vaccinated. And because she's not vaccinated, I feel like, and this is my opinion, and I mean, I know that the scientists are saying the same things. Kids that are unvaccinated should have a mask on to protect against the Delta variant. It's a lot more transmittable than just regular COVID. And there's been a surge lately, and I'm super happy that Mont Vernon doesn't have any cases. That's excellent. But let's not have any. Like, let's take the preemptive steps, just like the last gentleman said, to have the kids wear masks until vaccines open up to 11-year-olds. And then everybody that wants to be vaccinated can be vaccinated, and, you know, or 11 and under, or however old the kids are, as long as the kids in the school can be vaccinated, then I think we can take the masks off then, just like we're taking the masks off now, right? I'm assuming most people that take their masks off are vaccinated. But Grace can't take her mask off. And that's kind of been a family rule for us. So I'm really hoping that I don't have to institute a rule with an 11-year-old that the rest of the school is not going to follow, because it's going to make it really challenging. Thank you so much. And thank you for all the hard work last year. We really did have an exceptionally good year with Mrs. Anderson.
Thank you. Hello.
Hi, Alan Norman. I live in Mont Vernon.
If you come a little bit closer to the mic, we'll hear you much
Is
better.
that good?
A little bit closer.
There you go. Don't want to touch it.
Thank you.
I just wanted to say, so in the pre-COVID winter of 2019 to 2020, so that would have been pre-March 2020, I had a kindergartner in the village school, and I had a newborn. And at any point during that flu season, my kindergartner could have contracted the flu at the village school and brought it home to my newborn. And the chances of that virus making my newborn seriously sick, or, you know, in a terrible event, killing him, are much higher than that same risk from COVID. And so I'm just wondering, where was, you know, the public concern for the greater good for my newborn at that time? Why were we not suggesting masks then? And the answer to that question is not science. The answer to that question is politics. And I mean, I just think you're all in a difficult position. But as a parent, I was very well aware of that risk that I was taking on by choosing to send my son to the village school where he could have contracted the flu and brought it home to my newborn. I was very well aware of it, and I took the precautions that I did as a parent to protect my family. So I just feel like, I mean, it's a double standard, I guess. I mean, it's just, it doesn't make sense to me. And masks are not a benign thing. There is a negative, a very big negative aspect to masking. It's not like it's all this net positive, and why don't we just do it? Because even if it's like a little bit good, or there's a little bit of a benefit, or maybe there's a benefit, we should do it. There's definitely a negative. And maybe not for every kid, but for my kid, there is a negative. And there's a negative for him wearing it. There's also a negative for all of his friends being forced to wear it. So I think we should let the families best choose how to protect their own children. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Matthew Black. I'm from Mont Vernon, right across the street.
Can you speak?
My name is Matthew Black from Mont Vernon. I sent an email earlier about the draft plan for reopening. I was strongly in favor of the plan as written. I would like to suggest that we change back to requiring masks in the yellow status. These decisions are hard. You know, the analyzing the primary source data for, you know, the right thing to do, the transmissibility of the virus, the amount of carbon dioxide that builds up or does not build up inside masks, and then taking that information and coming up with the proper public health decisions that weigh the pros and cons, it's a very hard thing to do. And it is not something that I am qualified to decide for myself. Very few people are. So what I try to do with my children, and what I hope we are teaching children in the school, is the consensus opinion of experts is really the way that you can get to the truth, the right answer. Both of those things are important, consensus and experts. It's really, really easy for me to go out or anyone to go out and find an opinion from a person who is not an expert that fits with what I kind of want the answer to be to complex problems. It's also perfectly possible for a person to find an expert that has a fringe opinion that accords with what I want the answer to the problem to be. The best chance that we have of getting the right answer is the right way to do your own research, I think, is to try to figure out what the consensus opinion is of people who understand and know how to properly weigh the pros and cons. And in this case, I feel like it's pretty easy. That those experts and that consensus is what the CDC recommends, what the people who know and understand recommend. And that recommendation is, the reason I'm wearing a mask right now is, communities or counties that have a certain level of virus spread. Unfortunately, I'm back to wearing a mask. I think that that's the right thing to do, following what the consensus opinion of experts says. So I'd like to suggest and recommend that the board do that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, board. My name is Craig Wiley. I live in Mont Vernon, New Hampshire. I think at this point, pretty much everyone is galvanized in how they feel about this. And you guys had a complete no-win job. You weren't going to make everybody happy no matter what. And I think now more than ever, I'm realizing there's no more point in screaming at the walls and hoping the new data or the new fact or the new argument's going to get through to anybody. It's not where we're at. We've pretty much all made up our mind. So in that regard, I just want to ask that you keep in mind two things for me as a parent that doesn't agree with everything we're doing. One, and most importantly, what is the metric you have in your mind that will tell you we're going in the wrong direction? That we actually might be doing more harm than good? What would have to happen in our community to a child, to your child, to tell you, whoa, we need to change and we need to change that? We didn't take something into account. The other thing I'd like you to keep in mind is, how long are we going to do this? How long are we going to distance, remote, mask, double mask, vaccinate, booster shot, until we either have to say that is the new normal, or we need to get back to the way it was because it's just better that way, regardless of what may come of that negative input. I think more importantly for me, and this might be a bit of self-therapy, so excuse me a bit here, is I told my kids at the beginning of this I would do everything in my power so they would not have to go back to the school mask. We have our issues in families and learning disabilities and issues and everything else that everybody here has. But I made that promise to them, and I want to apologize to them because I failed. I didn't make that goal. I couldn't come up with the right arguments, the right science, the right convincing way to put a narrative to convince people this may not be the best way to go, that just mask every kid. It may not actually be harmless. Also, though, kids, I'd like to tell you, I'm confused by this as well. The idea that within the last 3 minutes, we said the CDC should be followed, and people are both following it saying to use masks, and people are not following it saying to use masks, as they are themselves not masked, but you're not going to have that ability. You're going to have to be masked. I don't think that's fair to them. If we're going to follow that guidance, let's follow that guidance, and let's get serious, and let's say it's a KN95 every day. Here's yours, put it on in that orange status. think we need to be serious. And to the kids at home, I want to say, you're going to hear a lot about this stuff going forward. You need to not be afraid of COVID. Yes, it's serious. Yes, in the worst case scenario, it can hurt you. But don't stop living your life. Don't let it hold you back. Don't let it stop you from things you are otherwise going to do. And as you go through the year, my biggest fear is that you will remain silent as you're feeling sad, you're feeling lonely, you're feeling depressed, you're feeling scared. And now that mask is hiding that from us adults. We need you to tell us you're suffering. We need you to tell us that things aren't going right for you, that you're not okay with it. And you are not a bad person if that's how you feel. If you feel that you're lonely when you get off a bus looking at 100 new faces that look bad at you.
I'm going to ask you to just take a few minutes and wrap it up. Thanks.
5 seconds. So if you're not okay with this, that's fine. You're not a bad person for it. We should not have put this burden on you to keep us healthy. That was never your responsibility. We are doing everything we can as a community to do what's best for you, and we disagree on that. Ultimately, we all want the same thing. So I'd say to the kids, to the parents, to the board, we've got to do a great job this year of watching these kids for warning signs more than ever. This is not the year to check out. Oh God, thank God they're back at school. Not my problem now. Dial in, know your kid, be their best friend. You just may need to be their advocate. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Rob Lovett, Mont Vernon. First, I just wanted to say I approve of this plan as amended. I want to thank you guys for what you had to put up with on Thursday. That was quite an ordeal. And I read through it and I noticed that in yellow, green, and blue, there's nothing that says you cannot mask your child. And as a parent with a child with an IEP with moderate to severe hearing loss that thusly requires speech therapy, not being able to see her peers move their lips has made her speech more delayed. And if masks are such an effective mitigation process, if a parent chooses to mask their child, then they should be in good shape. That's basically what I wanted to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hello. Hello, my name is Andrew Stokicher. I live in Mont Vernon. I have 3 children that attend this school. I'd like to thank you all for having such a very nice school for them to go to. I would like the school to amend the plan such that children are wearing masks all the way to the green section, and that the school consider holding vaccination clinics in the school for both the flu and for COVID when the vaccines are available this year. I would suggest you make these vaccine clinics opt out. This will help the school know how many students at the school are actually vaccinated. I believe both of these things will keep all of my 3 children safe this year. I think this is a good idea because it reduces the burden on our teachers from having to remember which child's parents would like their child masked and which ones do not. It will be very difficult for my children's teachers to remember that my children should keep their masks on at all times. Thank you.
Thank you.
On this warm Florida evening. I'll be brief.
A little closer to the mic.
Can you hear me now? For the interest of full disclosure, I have a soon-to-be senior at Hvac and a soon-to-be 5-year-old that's entering Mount Vernon Village School, but we'll talk about the age difference later. Right now, I am here because I was in support of Adam's original safety plan for obvious reasons. And one of the reasons was that the high school was going to open in green. One, because of, according to the matrix, case count and the ability to be vaccinated. Everyone in our household is vaccinated with the exception of our 4-year-old. my son, when he does attend South Egan, his plan is he probably will not wear a mask, and we're okay with that. We're not for our daughter. You know, she's had a number of medical issues in the past. She's been hospitalized a number of times. She did attend the summer program over here at MVVS, loved it, raved about it. Did get sick the final week, was out the final week, but now is asking to go back to school again in the next week or so. And we're kind of in a quandary right now. So for obvious reasons, and I do respect everyone's opinion here, but we do feel that we should revert back to Adam's original plan and masking at yellow level. If not, then my next recommendation would be if possibly we could open up in orange, if that's not possible. So thank you.
Thank you. Would any other members of the public like to speak who have not had the opportunity? Okay. Thank you all for your comments. We appreciate you coming out, number one, and standing up. I know it's a difficult thing to do, challenging speaking in public. I certainly have been sitting up here on this side of the table for many years, and I still find it a challenge. So thank you very much for your interaction. We appreciate it. So members of the board, having heard the public discussion, how would you like to open this discussion among ourselves? Mr. O'Keefe.
Yes, Mr. Steele, a couple questions with regards to the reopening plan in terms of the hierarchy and the matrix system. Can you speak quickly to the fluidity of moving between the different modalities, red, orange, yellow, green, and blue, and then the weighting that you're assigning to each one of those subcomponents of school cases, vaccination availability, rate of active cases per 100,000, test positivity rate by public health region, and vaccination rate by town?
Sure, happy to. So I'll start with the weighting. The weighting is in priority order. There's not been a specific weight assigned to each metric. The reason for that, last year, folks asked me for the metrics we would use to switch between the different modalities and status levels. And we didn't provide them in large measure because things were changing so quickly last year. We went into the equivalent of a red status in March of 2020, when I believe there were no active cases in either town and very few in the entire state, but it was a very proactive measure. As we've learned about COVID, things have changed. And so I expect and anticipate things will also change and adapt this year as well. And so while they are in priority order, I think we have the ability to be flexible as the different factors change to make a decision for each school based on some common sense being applied. With that said, one significant change from this year's plan and last year's, in addition to defining metrics, is that we are applying different status levels to our different schools, because the different schools have different characteristics and our different towns have different metrics associated with them. And so that's a different change from last year, where every school acted in concert. In terms of the fluidity, last year we had a plan that had different segments of the school year, and our hope was that we would make changes in any status levels at the segment change. And one lesson learned was COVID and the change in our community metrics didn't follow with our segments necessarily. And so we found ourselves in mid-segment wanting to make a change and having that be difficult for our families to adapt. And so this year we have no segments, which means we can move more fluidly. However, our families need time for planning, especially if we're going to go from in-person to remote or vice versa, which hopefully we don't ever have to do this school year. But if so, if there was a change in status and we could wait until the end of a weekend or the end of a month, we would certainly do that. But if we're facing a hockey stick of change in statuses or change in cases or something, we would move as quickly as we had to. So we would attempt to give our family and community as much lead time as possible before a substantive change. but we would also reserve the right to act quickly if we had to, based on local conditions. And then one final thing I'll note, our rate of active cases per 100,000 is significantly underweighted. If the current listing that's listed there, 400 cases per 100,000 in Mont Vernon is the equivalent of 10 cases in town. That doesn't make a lot of sense. And so I would suggest we also adjust those weights from Mont Vernon and probably multiply them by 10, meaning if we would probably not be real concerned in Mont Vernon unless we got to 100 active cases in town. And even that might be a little on the low side for moving into a red status. But that you didn't specifically ask about that, but I wanted to make mention of that.
Thank you. And as a follow-up, with regards to the current identification of us starting off in status yellow, we currently are in orange on 3 of our metrics and blue on 2. So talk quickly about how school cases, if our school building were to encounter 2 cases, we would immediately fall, using the criteria above, into the yellow status based on a population of 200 students. How would that be a significant change to your mindset of continuing in status yellow versus converting over to orange?
Thank you. So with 200 students, more than 10% of the student body having a positive rate would be 20 kids in the school, which is much higher than any case count we had last year at any point in the year. Getting to the green status and 2% would be 4 cases. And moving to yellow would be at least 16 cases in the building. And I think that's still a pretty significant number given our cases last year and our experience from last year. As I look at the various status levels where 2 are blue, 3 are orange, I have a question about the number of active cases amongst our student body. And the reason for that is I've noticed that the state data typically lags real time by a couple of weeks. And so there's a part of me that wants to have our students return from all the different places they've been over the summer, have school start in a slightly more restrictive status, and then be able to ease into green if that case count remains accurate moving forward. So if we're mid-September and there are still no cases in Mont Vernon or very few cases in town at all, and no school cases have popped up in those few weeks, I would be suggesting anyway that we moving into green in mid-September anyway, despite the fact that vaccination is not available. But we would be fairly quick to move back into yellow if case counts appeared in town again, since vaccination is not an option for our parents.
So not an effort to belabor the point, but if we were to move school cases from blue to green or blue to yellow because 4 kids within inside of our subset became sick and affected with COVID, how would that impact the overall current status? Would that be enough in terms of your weighting based on the paragraph just above that to then flip us as a school from current status yellow into orange? Because I know the metric alone will not be enough to actually move us, but collectively across with 3 oranges and 2 blues, then you'll have 3 oranges and 1 yellow or 1 green, hence the need for potentially moving us directly into orange, potentially within the first week of instruction.
In my opinion, if that were the case, if 4 cases showed up in our school in the first week of school, which would make that indicator yellow, still given the rate of active cases in the town of Mont Vernon, which would also go to 4 at least, if there's 4 students in town, would tick that up slightly. I still think yellow would be appropriate there. And it's, to me, that is such a low number in comparison to the rest of the school population. So I don't think it could be far before we would say that orange would be necessary. If we got to the 16 cases in the school, that's a significant number of cases for Mont Vernon, for the village school, not for the town, but for the village school. Then I'd be very comfortable moving us into orange at that point.
And one more additional follow-up with regards to the mitigation efforts at yellow and orange. Talk quickly about the differences between the 2 subsets or identifications. Obviously, the school lockdown, the visitors, the lunch program, which I know we weren't successful at last year. Can you just quickly talk to those, please?
Indeed. So orange means that we are doing everything we can to keep our in-person school environment open, which means we would be very restrictive in movement throughout the building. We would take another pass at having lunch out of the NPR so that we wouldn't have that number of students in the NPR at one time. We would have a lot more restriction for access to the building by visitors or guests, so there would not be access under orange. All of our parent meetings would be done remotely unless there was a very unique circumstance that prevented that. And other smaller things like in things that would affect the music class or art classes, et cetera, that we would put into play that would be more restrictive. So the difference really between orange and yellow is orange is similar to last year's yellow in that we do everything we can to restrict movement in the building and from students being outside of the cohort during the day.
Okay, thank you. Kristen, did you have?
I do have a question. And I recognize the difficulty in making a flow chart like this. It's very difficult to determine weighting in any kind of meaningful way because they all contribute in very different ways. So I do understand that. The one thing that I did want some clarity on is the vaccine availability item. Availability, uptake, these are different things. Time availability. Vaccine may be available, but it's not necessarily accessible for a certain period of time. Do you have any kind of perspective on what that means to determine whether or not the school is at vaccine availability?
Yeah, and in my judgment, if say the FDA granted emergency use authorization for the Pfizer vaccine for ages 5 to 11 tomorrow, to me that means that it is available but not yet accessible. And so I would say if 6 weeks from now, if as we track accessibility for our population and found that there was no problem with parents having appointments, having a first vaccination, waiting 2 weeks, having the second vaccination, and then 2 weeks after knowing that full vaccination status has been achieved, then I think that would flip from into green for that particular indicator. So for me, it's not just that it's available, but we have to wait for the accessibility to make sure folks have access to the vaccine. Also have waited for the course for the vaccination inoculation to take effect.
That's all I have right now. Yes.
Thank you. I just want to take a moment and check and see if our board members who are dialing in have any comments or questions.
I sent my questions to Adam over chat and he answered them because it was the same as Steven's question.
Can you say that one more time? I'm sorry, we didn't hear you.
I sent my questions to Adam over chat and he answered those.
Yeah. Can you read the questions so that we have the
Sure,
benefit of
Jess,
that?
with your permission, I'll read the questions. So she asked, what is the case threshold for moving from yellow to orange? How many cases in Mont Vernon would it take to require masks? And so I answered that I think that metric is too low, as I indicated in response to your question. She said if she agreed that the numbers were too low, but if we're staying with yellow and masks being optional, then she's glad that the number was low.
And is Mr. Eckhoff online?
Unfortunately, Mr. Eckhoff has not been able to join.
Okay, thank you. So I'd like to talk about a couple of the things that I've been hearing from some community members. One of the things that I've been hearing is that with our other policies, we always defer to specific bodies for guidance and guidelines. For instance, when we're creating policies on health and wellness, we defer to the CDC, to the American Academy of Pediatrics, to DHHS, to CHAD, I mean, other local experts. So why would we differ, or why would our policy differ from their recommendation is one of the things that I've heard. So do we want to discuss that? I mean, I think we chewed on it a little bit the other night at the SAU board meeting, but one of the things that made me feel more comfortable with the status yellow as recommended at that meeting is the metrics, and that the numbers are so low that it would be such a low threshold in Mont Vernon for the status to change from yellow to orange. So that made me feel more comfortable with that decision the other night, but I do think it's a valid point to discuss. So would you like to?
Yeah, so I'll just touch upon that real fast, and this isn't a commentary or editorial or my personal view, but from a perspective of the state level, they have passed this decision down to the local level. So communities like ours can engage in a conversation and execute on a plan that we feel is most appropriate for our individual community. And so over the summer, I had the privilege and honor of working with Mr. Steele on the task force to design, develop, and create this reopening plan. To be honest, we stole a lot from last year, let's be honest. We didn't want to recreate the work from scratch. But we had awesome dialogue that was open and transparent to our community. Members of the community were able to join virtually and engage not only members of the task force, but join a subcommittee. And I happened to lead a great team of our district's professionals, the faculty, staff, and paraprofessionals, and solicited their feedback over the course of multiple sessions throughout the summer. As a result of that, we then delivered that feedback to the superintendent, where we then crafted the actual plan. And that plan was presented to the entire school board last week. And last week, members of the community provided feedback and encouraged on both sides of the debate potential changes for, I guess you could say, a better infusion and weaving into the fabric of our community. Some folks and some of the feedback that I received, we failed at that. And some members of the community said that we succeeded at that. So that's exactly the reason why we're having this dialogue and this conversation, because we want to make a plan that's appropriate for us, for our community, our values, and what we believe is paramount for us.
Thank you. Kristen, any thoughts?
I mean, I agree. I think some of the decision to defer is partially how fraught this is. And I think that there are a lot of really excellent points with students that need extra support, and that could be very frustrating as a parent, and my child goes to Mont Vernon. But yes, ultimately, I do think that we should be following consistently the recommendations of professionals whose jobs are to keep our children safe. And that's where the comment was made of starting out the term in orange to give us some time to figure out, what we're looking at. And personally, I do feel like that's more in line with the recommendations that we have nationally, but then still keeps the community context of this status level system, which is where I feel like might meet some of those concerns. And similarly, I've heard from a lot of parents that they haven't come to these, just assumed that we were going to do what they felt was the right thing to protect their kids. And I understand that that's not necessarily everyone's opinion, but that's what I was hearing as well. So
Thank you. Did Ms. Hinckley, Jess Hinckley, did you have anything that you wanted to add to that?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
So I agree with Kristen. I mean, P and the CDC have made these recommendations, and I think that we should follow the experts. I also think we should start the year with masks, at least for the first 2 weeks. Given that kids have been traveling, they've been around other people outside of our community, and could be bringing things back to the school that we'd rather not have them share. So I feel that we should at least start the year with masks, and if we can move away from them later in the year, so be it. But I think starting the year unmasked would be a mistake.
Thank you. So am I hearing that our suggestion or recommendation is to start the year in status orange.
Or to incorporate masks back into yellow. Is my-
Okay, so either start in orange or reincorporate masks into status yellow. Mr. O'Keefe, am I getting an,
That's
Inkling
what
for where
my
you are?
understanding is that I hear is on the floor, sure.
okay, so if we, let's just look at that a little bit. I mean, if we go back to status yellow, the difference between green and yellow really at this point is the addition of volunteers into status yellow, masks being optional instead of being required. And orange really takes us to that next step. So the question being, do we make the shift to make masks required at status yellow or not? Can you? Yeah, thank you.
When we were talking about the success we had last year with the low infection rates, and we do need to remember that that was with universal masking. That was with the context of all the students' masks. I think if we want to have a repeat or a best chance of not interrupting learning, and I dealt with my child going back and forth from in-person to online. We stayed online for half the year, and then she came back, and then 2 weeks later was exposed. And that transition back and forth between remote and in-person is stressful, and which makes me lean towards adding the masks back into yellow to give us the best chance of a long, successful school year.
Okay, so shall we talk about status green for a minute and what the metrics are for status green? So that we have a clear understanding of what green looks like in our community versus status yellow? Okay. Superintendent Steele, can you just run us through those numbers again quickly? I think I've got it here, but it looks like we'd be less than 2% with the current chart, less than 2% of school cases.
Yes, that would be under 4 or 5 cases in the Mont Vernon Village School. Rate of active cases per 100,000 with an updated number of between 251 and 1,000 as a rate. That would work out in Mont Vernon to between 7 and 25 cases in the whole town of Mont Vernon. Moving down, the test positivity rate by public health region between 1 and 3% for PCR and antigen tests. Again, and someone who is a medical professional can correct me, but generally if a test positivity rate is over 1%, it generally means that there are undiagnosed cases in the community that are not being tested. A test positivity rate under 1% means that we're doing enough testing. So between 1 and 3% keeps us in green. And then vaccination rate by town, between 65 and 80%. There are different standards for so-called herd immunity, and that is shifted with time. It appears that 80% seems to be a consensus number right now. I don't know if you have a better number for that, Kristen.
Currently, given the current state.
Okay, do we have any questions about status green? No, okay. What about adjusted rates for status yellow?
So the numbers for status yellow would be a school case count of between 5 and 16, 17 cases. A rate of active cases per 100,000 of between 1,000 and 3,000, which translates to between 25 and 75 active cases in Mont Vernon at any one time. Test positivity rate of between 3 and 5%, and a vaccination rate of between 55 and 65%, which Mont Vernon is just below that right now.
Okay, so thoughts with those adjusted numbers?
I'm comfortable with the adjusted numbers.
You're comfortable with the adjusted numbers, okay. Mrs. Hinckley, are you comfortable with the adjusted numbers?
Yes.
Okay. So when we get down to ratifying it, we would make an amendment or a motion to adjust that for our district, okay. So now let's talk about masking in yellow. Mr. O'Keefe, you and I the other night were pretty solidly comfortable with our decision to remove masking from that status. I'm on the fence. I mean, very honestly, I'm on the fence about it. I mean, much like you, I think there's data that supports both ways. We don't have enough, information about pediatric masking to really tell us that the cloth masks are useful. I do believe that N95s can be protective. So what information do you follow with the CDC? If the CDC says that, surgical masks and N95s are the way to go, is that going to be our recommendation for our schools, or how do we jive? How do we make that jive?
Like what types of masks the students wear?
Yeah.
Unless something has come out more recent, the medical masks and the N95s had equal effectiveness in the community at the last meta-analysis I read.
Okay. How about
unless
cloth,
something
how
coming out
about
more
cloth
recently.
masking?
Cloth masking with enough layers and the correct material was about 80% I needed to see. I think obviously everything is coming out frequently. So unless something's coming out more recent, cloth masks were still pretty effective in the 80% range with enough layers. Delta results in a little bit of a lag on data. Outdoor transmission with the previous strain we knew was pretty much non-existent, but Delta has created a little bit of a difference there that we're not sure about that factor either. So the best way to proceed is go off of the best available evidence, which is cloth masks are pretty effective. Not as effective as a medical mask or an N95, yes. But N95s, you have to remember, are not tested in pediatric patients or pediatric population. So I think that it's fair that we can get, are we thinking about giving parents like a best practices, or what were your thoughts on that?
Well, I'm wondering if we're going off of CDC guidelines, if we should take that stance. If we're talking about being protective and standing for safety, then I think we should issue a best practice if that's going to be our stance.
Yeah, can give information about the most appropriate cloth mask version so that people are aware. I think it was
When they're
3
making
layers,
decisions.
if I remember correctly. I can be happy to gather that information if that's helpful.
Okay, thank you. I think the other thing that we need to talk about, since we did hear from quite a few members of the community, are how masking can inhibit communication with children, with every child, but especially for children who have special needs, who may have speech and language difficulties. So what about masks that have like the windows that are the visual masks that have been used by our speech and language pathologists? What do we know about those? Could we make those available for kids so that there's less of a barrier?
Yes, that was also a note I had. I was wondering if we had availability for funding, even for students, if we could provide them to their peers, if that was something that we could facilitate so that students who did need the lip reading for support language services, that they could also interact with peers better.
Right.
There are pediatric masks with the windows in them.
Okay, so in talking about masks, we do need to do the difficult thing and decide what we're doing with status yellow. So why don't we just, we have to say ultimately where we stand each as we go through this before we make a decision. So let's just do it.
I make a motion, Madam Chairwoman, to modify the plan adopted by the SAU School Board to require masks at the yellow status.
Okay, do we have any discussion on that motion?
Separate.
Oh, we need a second. I'm sorry. Thank you.
I'll second.
Thank you. Do we have any discussion on that motion?
So with regards to discussion, Madam Chairwoman, 2 things. Number one, last year we were very successful because there were multiple layers of mitigation that we had. This year, we're extremely limited with a lot of those layers of mitigation, being class sizes, being not necessarily reduced as they were last year, having a subset of our population that were remote and outside of the classrooms and safe in that perspective. And when we take a look at the cleaning capabilities, although I would hope they would stay at the same levels at all of our tiers year-round permanently, I believe that they're indicated in the plan actually at orange for more intensive cleaning. So when we talk about the mitigation efforts, masks clearly are just one of many tools on the tool belt, and deciding whether or not you agree or don't agree, I don't think we have any anti-maskers here on the board. I think I personally believe masks work. I wear them almost every single day as a part of my career, my job, and my children indicated that, you know what, regardless of what's required, they'll wear a mask in school to protect other people. And I think that's what masks are all about. When we take a look at the engagement with our community over the last 4 days, it has been extremely polarizing on both sides. There is no, like Mr. Wiley had said earlier, There's no convincing anybody of anything at this point, because I think everyone's minds are pretty much made up. And so now as a board, we need to sort of figure out which direction do we want to move our school community in to offer the most significant part of protection for those that are concerned, and also to address the concerns of the members of our community that don't necessarily agree with those. And so the tough decision on our part is, do we eliminate the Met Yellow and keep the status quo as the plan is written or as amended at the SAU meeting? Or do we actually go ahead and modify that? So two things actually happened to me this weekend when I was working on Sunday. Number one, there was a medical call that actually had to be diverted out of St. Joseph's Hospital in Nashua because they were out of pediatric beds. And so it had to actually be transported up to the Elliott. And so it prompted me to actually go online and look what the percentage of hospitalization and more importantly, beds that are available with inside our generic community, Hillsborough County. And it's, I believe, 16%. Ms. Norman, I know you're really good on that website, so if you can correct me on that, that would be awesome. 16% hospitalization rate, beds available for Hillsborough County. So with that statistic and moving in, I know Ms. Hinckley had spoken to me saying that there's some serious concerns amongst some of the parents about those numbers. And regardless of what my feelings are on masks, if we are able to provide a level of comfort for parents who are sending their kids into this building to be educated by the greats of Miss Maddie over there, that comfort goes a long way because it reduces the anxiety at home. It reduces the anxiety for that child and creates a much more, I guess you could say, well-rounded experience on one side. Because then on the other side, we have, I don't want to wear a mask. They're uncomfortable. I can't breathe. I'm not used to it, or whatever other issues may come up on that part of the conversation. So I make this motion with a strong recommendation, and we're going to be talking about this later, the social emotional wealth of our students and the plan that we had asked and requested back in back in June, that we address those concerns with those kids so we can lower the temperature, make them feel more comfortable inside this building if they are required to wear a mask all day long. And most importantly, providing mask breaks, outside education. We lost our tents last year in a storm. Is there anything in the budget that we can go ahead and set something up with proper permitting, of course, providing any opportunities for kids to get outside and take those masks off so they can be kids again. I think we all want to get back to normal. I want to get back to normal. It was very refreshing to take the mask off this summer, but they're back on because there's something different happening. That's the problem that we are in this particular pandemic. Things are just as fluid as this reopening plan. I asked about the pros and the cons and the fluidity of it. I expect our superintendent's going to stay on top of it. The plan empowers him to make decisions in real time based on our prior authorization and our approval. And that's why I'm going to support the amendment and the change.
Thank you.
You already know I support it. And I just want to amend something you brought up about beds is that we're not also talking about a healthcare worker shortage. Like I work in nursing and there is a nursing shortage in this state. And treating pediatric patients is something that I was never prepared or certified to do. I could not take care of a pediatric patient in ICU. That was never something that I was trained to do and is not something that nurses are universally capable of doing. And that does create a risk that is scary. And I do think that one child that a family has to go through that is too many. And God forbid the community has to go through the loss of a child. Like, I don't think any of us could deal with that. It's a very close-knit community. I fully agree. Like if we can enhance the social support and emotional support of the children that are struggling, if we already have a plan or tools in place to how to do that, but to develop something operationalized would be really great. And facilitating the clear masks to address those concerns, very important concerns. But I think with those, it would be really helpful to move towards masks in yellow.
Thank you. In addition, I'd just like to talk about the exemption process, because I know last year there was an exemption process built in for parents who either had a medical exemption for their child or felt that because of an IEP, 504, et cetera, that their child would do better unmasked. So I want to make sure that we are clear on what that exemption process looks like so that when parents have questions. I know it's not an if, so when parents have questions about that process, we're clear. So Superintendent Steele, can you just address the exemption process?
Happy to. So either because of a disability identified by the IEP team or by a doctor's note that specifically states that a mask is not in the child's medical best interest, a student would be exempted from the mask policy. One difference from last year, if you think about last year, every parent had a remote option for the entire year. And so last year we were able to require the use of masks for every student in the building because the remote option was still FAPE, still free and adequate public education for all of our students. This year, our remote option is very different, is less connected to our school, and thus in the in-person environment, we need to make sure every student has the ability to come to our school. And so a doctor's note or an identification by the IEP team, either one of those would exempt a student from needing to wear a mask. And I'm not sure this board remembers, but last year, the policy that was in effect last year and is still in effect that covers this plan was written by our attorney who investigated the process and suggested that's how we exempt students from the mask requirement.
And just to be clear, included in that exemption would be social emotional wellness if a child were struggling and went to a physician, naturopath, DO, whoever, and that physician determined with the parent that for those reasons the child would be best served not to be masked, that would also be acceptable if it came from the physician.
So we are not in the position to question the medical diagnosis made by a licensed physician. So if a physician is licensed in the state of New Hampshire and they write us a note saying that a student cannot wear a mask for a medical reason, either defined or undefined in the note, we're not going to be in a position to be able to question that based on our lawyer's advice in writing that policy.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. Hinckley, did you have any comments?
No, Stephen and Kristen both articulated my feelings quite well.
Thank you, Mr. Eckhoff.
Good evening, everyone. Sorry for the late arrival. I literally tagged in at about 8 minutes ago, so I only caught part of the conversation, but I thought Mr. O'Keefe explained things very well. I can't speak to what Kristen spoke to. I think the key thing for everyone to know is, as a board and me personally, we're all plugged into the day-to-day challenges that everybody's faced with in terms of reacting and being concerned and preventative for our students. So, we could make a decision tonight, and then within 48 hours, we could be back here talking again to make a change. So, again, I apologize for being late to the meeting, but that is my comment for now.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Okay, Mr. Eckhoff, you will not be able to vote on this proposed amendment because you did not hear all of the discussion, just so you're aware.
Understood, and again, my apologies to the board and to the community.
Thank you for attending. Okay, so we do need to take a roll call vote because we do have members who are on the phone or Zoom. So I just need to ask Mrs. Hinckley, can you please state that it was unreasonable for you to attend the meeting and that you are alone?
It was unreasonable for me to be able to attend in person, and I am alone.
Thank you. So we do need a roll call vote on the amendment proposed by Mr. O'Keefe to add masking back into status yellow for the Mont Vernon School District.
Correct me if I do this wrong. Clerk, yes.
You did it perfectly. For your first board meeting, bravo. Our second.
O'Keefe, yes.
Lawrence, yes.
Hinckley, yes.
Okay, thank you. So that amendment passes. Do you need a?
I then make a motion to make a motion to modify the adjusted weights in the Mont Vernon active case rate to actually show green. This is the number right here. Let's start up with yellow. Hold on. Put up there. So red will be greater than 4,000. Orange will be 3,001 to 4,000. Yellow will be 1,001 to 3,000. Green will be 251 to 1,000. And blue will be 0 to 250. Keep in mind that that number is not really, we don't even have, 4,000 people in Mont Vernon. So just for perspective reasons.
Thank you. Do I have a second for that motion?
I'll second.
Thank you. Any discussion on that motion?
I do want to just quickly comment because I want to make sure that people properly understand what Sarah, myself, and Peter had done at the SU meeting last week. And that was to try to take into account everyone's concerns about the reopening plan and modifying our yellow status with a mask option. Because we knew by doing the math, this town would be impacted severely with 1 or 2 cases, and we would have been immediately thrust into a higher level. And so from our perspective, we felt that that was a more organic way to address parents' concerns, saying, hey, there are no cases in Mont Vernon. Things are completely different than where they were even last September. Because last September, and I know firsthand because there were 2 cases in this town over the course of the first week of school. And so setting us up for success this year was our original intent. Now, as I mentioned earlier, my information set changed over the weekend because of that experience. And it prompted me to actually see, after a conversation with Ms. Hinckley, that yes, we could actually be better off starting in yellow with a mask mandate at this point. So I do support the motion that's been presented.
Mrs. Hinckley or Mr. Eckhoff, do you have any comments on the motion on the floor?
I do not.
I do not. I will say that I received some information from close friends of mine that commented about the higher rate of incidence amongst younger children regarding contacting COVID and the need for medical treatment. So I'm 100% in agreement with the amendment we just made and the new numbers that Steve just spoke to.
Okay. So let's call a vote on that. Again, Mr. Eckhoff, I do just need you to state that that it was unreasonable for you to attend the meeting in person and that you are alone.
It was unreasonable for me to be live in person at tonight's meeting. I am alone in my upstairs bedroom.
Thank you. So now we can call a roll call vote on the amendment that's on the floor.
Clark, yes.
Lawrence, yes.
Hinckley, yes.
Eckhoff, yes.
Thank you. So we will adjust those numbers. Appreciate it. Any other discussion on the reopening proposal?
I would also like to ask that the superintendent give monthly notices or updates in terms of where we're at from a condition standpoint. I know you're going to do that anyway, but in writing to the community, so we know where we are from a perspective in our overall matrix.
Happy to.
I do know that that one thing, Mr. Eckhoff, I saw a note from you about outdoor classrooms and the potential for increasing our capacity to do that. I would fully support that as well. And I don't know if there's any potential to be able to use ESSER funds to do that, but Superintendent Steele, could we task you with that?
Yes, indeed. I thought it was a nice idea by Mr. Eckhoff. Thank you for it, Peter. And so I'm going to ask our new principal, Mr. Lecklider, to work with our facilities director to scope out spaces And then with our business administrator, Amy Facey, to see if ESSER funds are available for that purpose. It will not be something we do in the next 2 weeks as we work to start our school year, but it will be something that we will work on into September.
Thank you.
And if I could just
So,
jump in real quick on that.
I believe we should entertain a motion to now accept the reopening plan as revised in totality. Do you agree with that?
I make a motion to adopt the reopening plan as amended.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Mrs. Hinckley or Mr. Eckhoff, do you have any discussion on that motion?
I do not.
No, I do not.
Okay, hearing no discussion, let's call the vote on the motion. We're going to call the vote on the motion to adopt, so we just need a roll call vote.
Okay, yes, Clark, yes, I'm sorry.
O'Keefe, yes.
Lawrence, yes.
Hinckley, yes.
Mr. Eckhoff?
Not allowed to vote, so I'm going to abstain.
Okay, thank you. So that motion passes with 4 yeses and 1 abstention.
Just as a point of clarity, the reopening plan as amended requires masks for everybody in our buildings, visitors, faculty, staff, employees, contractors, everybody. If we're going to do it, we might as well protect everybody.
Yes, that's my understanding.
Yep, and that is consistent with the yellow status for the Amherst School District down the hill. Same exact concept.
Okay, thank you. Thank you all for the difficult discussion and for the thoughtful consideration. All right, we are up to the consent agenda. Do we have anything that we need to pull from the consent agenda?
Mr. Torres wants to review the minutes.
So in the consent agenda, we do have draft minutes from June 14th, July 14th, July 15th. We have the master budget calendar in here, a facilities update, which we will be getting a facilities update to the board in just a moment, and also the student handbook. So do we have any questions? Mr. O'Keefe, you'd like to pull 5 and 6? None. Ms. Hinckley or Mr. Eckhoff, would you like to pull anything from the consent agenda?
I do not.
I do not. Thank you.
Okay, so Mr. O'Keefe has asked to pull items 4, 5, and 6. So Mr. O'Keefe, would you like to make a motion to accept consent agenda items 1, 2, and 3?
I make a motion to accept consent agenda items 1, 2, and 3.
Do we have a second?
I second that.
Thank you. Any discussion on accepting the consent agenda items 1, 2, and 3? Hearing none, let's call the vote.
Yes, Clark, yes.
O'Keefe, yes.
Lawrence, yes.
Hinckley, yes.
Eckhoff, yes.
Thank you. So Mr. O'Keefe, what did you want to discuss about consent agenda items 4, 5, and 6?
Yes, with number 4, Ms. Facey, the budget creation sort of item. Are we caught up to speed because of our staffing issues with, obviously all the stuff that should have been submitted prior to August the 11th? Administrative preliminary staffing plan, non-personnel budgets. Oh, my apologies. I can speak up if that's okay. Are we caught up to speed with the budget items listed in consent agenda item number 4, with the budget committee process meeting, the strategic budgeting session, the non-personnel budgets due to the business administrator, and the administrative preliminary staffing plan, because all those were due prior to the hiring of our new principal?
Yes, yep, that's really part of the budget creation process. So that's where we're gathering, information internally. And then we have some internal district budget reviews scheduled. where we'll first be looking at all budget items that are non-staffing, and then our second review will include staffing plans.
And so who would have crafted the staffing plan?
So I don't believe there were changes.
Okay.
So Christine was working on that prior to us having our new principal.
Okay, thank you.
But certainly if there are any adjustments now that he's on board, we have the ability to discuss that.
Yeah, so my concern is that we've got a new administrator that doesn't necessarily know the land just yet.
Yeah.
And so I'd hope that if someone's making a recommendation to do subtracting or adding, that it was somebody like Christine who's got their finger on the pulse and so forth.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Christine was heavily involved in that.
I'm all set.
So the only other items that I would ask for the board to consider is to, when you have your budget subcommittee members identified, that would be great. We already do have the dates set, and we'll be happy to send out invitations to those meetings in addition to the budget committee members.
Thank you. Do we know do we have any budget committee members from the public who've stepped forward yet? I know there's been a little interest. I've been trying to.
Yeah, I have not
encourage.
heard from Mr. King on that and who might be
Okay.
chair, but
Okay.
maybe we should discuss that and get that moving so
Okay.
that we can have members identified.
That would be great. I'm sure Mr. King is watching at home
I'm sure Mr. King is
and
watching.
with a beer. But if we can reach out to him in case he's not, just to make sure that he is aware that we're ready, we've got the dates, and we need to identify a couple of community members that are willing to step forward.
Yep, absolutely.
And to any community members who are willing to step forward.
Mr. Wiley,
We greatly appreciate you.
Miss Kennedy, there we go.
We're talking to you.
Well, she's already the rec director. It was way too much.
So we can, per Ms. Spacey's request, what I would like to do is I'd like to ask the board to just look at the subcommittee meeting dates. And if you have anything that you're particularly drawn to from a budgetary standpoint, if you want to just go ahead and email me and I'll get back to Ms. Spacey on that. If anybody wants multiple things and we're going to battle it out, I'll just have to assign them, I guess, but I think we'll be fine. Was there anything else on that consent agenda item, Mr. O'Keefe?
Not on number 4.
Okay, so what about number 5?
For 5, let me get there. So I know we're going to get, we got a great update. There's Roger right there. With the roof. Are we going to be doing anything more with the siding? I noticed walking around, there's still a bunch of cracked siding. I don't know if that was a result of some of the contract work or, I mean, you notice some of the siding out here is cracked. The doors by Jan Maddie's classroom, some of the siding over there is cracked, specifically around the door frames.
We will be addressing those. We have the roof substantially complete, created a punch list with our vendor.
Okay.
And we're just waiting for him to come back and create that, finish the punch list with it. We have materials on the roof, we have some metal edging that needs to be repaired, we have a shingle overhang, and then we just need to have that trimmed back. We have some landscape repairs that we need to do, and some siding. And we have on the front here, we just have to repair the top part of the exhaust fan as well. We've sent this report to the vendor, we're just waiting for it. Waiting for it to be
Because I noticed during the hurricane, a lot of the vents weren't spinning, so I didn't know if those were damaged or not.
It should be from damage. So we just want to make
Cool.
sure everything's working.
Okay, I love the copper too. I think it's a really nice touch.
What's that again?
The copper
Oh, it looks great.
down the spouts. And then last, I'm getting really technical here, I'm sorry. The gutters that were over the door, specifically in the second grade area, are we gonna replace those? I know they were all broken anyway,
Those are being replaced as well. That's part of it.
because I remember you talking about that. Thank you. And then lastly, I know we want to develop a plan to create some outdoor space. We have some awesome picnic tables out there that were donated. Maybe we could just go to Lowe's and buy some umbrellas and set them up next to the picnic tables so teachers can go out, have some shade from those umbrellas, and then close them after the lesson, wrap them up so they're not blowing away at night. That's a very quick, cheap way that we can execute on getting folks and kids outside.
Yeah,
Just an idea.
it's great option. Tom and I will work on that.
Any other questions on item 5?
feel like I'm occupying way too much. The last one was the water. So after the pump was replaced, everything turned out well with the well?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Everything, once the project replaced, we chlorinated the well because we pulled all of the piping, the pump and the motor out of the well. So we need to chlorinate it to make sure that there's no bacteria in the well. So what we did is we chlorinated it and then we actually flushed the entire building for 2 days. As we all know, we had to add another day to it to continue the flushing because we had a little bit of more chlorine in there than the building should actually take as far as within state requirements. So once that dissipated, we tested for bacteria and the bacteria test came back non-present.
Okay. Hold on just a quick sec, sorry.
Thank you. Was there anything else on that, Mr. O'Keefe?
I was just informed that 2 COVID 6th grade classes are donating outdoor classroom equipment. Supplies as their class gift, including umbrellas. So live feed, I love the public. That's all I have for buildings.
Okay. Roger.
So, sorry. In my update for June, we received the HVAC RFP back. We're certainly not looking for you guys to make a decision tonight, but maybe by the next meeting, you can review the information and be able to speak to it at the next meeting. We do have the vendor holding their bid until the board is able to make a decision on that. So hopefully by next meeting, we can make a decision on whether or not we want to move forward with all of the project or a portion of the project.
Yeah, if I could speak to that, Madam Chair.
Yep.
So as the board knows and the public has supported us for the past several years in putting away $50,000 a year to our facilities plan. It's been a very well thought out plan, very well received plan. It's passed every year by our voters. Our voters are supportive of it. The roof project was pretty exciting for those of us who've been here for a while because we've been talking about it for many, many years, and we saved the money for it. We paid cash for the plan, worked out very well. The next project in our list is our HVAC upgrade. And so Roger has gone through that entire process. We used some year-end funds and some grant funds to do the HVAC design and investigation work. And so we've identified the duct board in all of our ceilings is the primary thing that will need to be replaced at some point. And that bid that we got came back at $181,000.
215 and some change.
Okay, don't know where I came up with that number. Thanks, Roger. $215,000 and change. And so our plan was to do that 2 or 3 years from now, but we knew that the roof bid came back so much under what we had budgeted that we thought it was worth investigating. Can we do that sooner than later? And so tonight, we'd like the board to give us some direction to prepare for next meeting to make a recommendation. And so your options are, we simply follow the plan. When we have the funds available, we do the work. Another option would be we attempt to accelerate the plan using ESSER funds that are available that are not needed for intervention this year or for support of remote students, and attempt to do the project next summer. Or we attempt to do the project next summer and some of the additional items that we've identified beyond the duct board that put us above our budgeted amount, but are things that should be done at some point into the future. And so to be clear, I know where the 181 came from. The $181,000 was what we thought the entire project would cost, duct board and replacing HVAC units. But we're at $215,000 just doing the duct board. And how much more for the HVAC units, Roger, roughly?
Another 100,000.
Another 100,000.
Roughly.
So our funding plan has had the benefit of a low roof bid, but the unexpected negative of higher than expected HVAC costs to do that project. So our options are, do we stay on track and wait till we have all the money to do the project as we planned, or do we make some attempt to accelerate that project and do it as soon as next summer in some form or fashion? And so we're not looking for a decision tonight by any means, but hoping the board might say to us, nope, just stick with the plan. We'll do it in a couple of years when we have the money, or let's use ESSER funding and the savings from the roof and try to do this sooner than later. And if you suggest that, we'll prepare a plan to present to you next month so you can take action on it.
So if I may, my answer to that question is based on what the remaining balance in our trust is. Do you know that, Amy, by chance? I don't want to put you on the spot there.
No, it's fine. So, yeah, in the trust now is about 361,000 and the roof cost was 211. So it would be the balance of that. For ESSER 2 funds, there's a balance of about 19,000 and ESSER 3, there's 98,000. So we're not sure though what we potentially need to use of those funds. So if you were to use all of those, you'd have 267, but I would caution that we would not probably have all of the ESSER funds available.
The total cost of the HVAC project, everything is.
It's not in there. It's, I see 87,000, 86, 28, 88,000.
Yeah, 315, let's say. The 215 plus the 100. Yeah.
I actually see 4 quotes in here for HV1, 2, FC1, and ACU1 for a computer room.
That's all the mechanicals. We wanted each one broken down to be able to select if we were only going to go with one unit or not.
Okay, so the collective amount under alternative 1, I'm assuming needs to be added to the base bid.
If we want to select to go in replacing the mechanicals as well.
So like doing everything across the board, I guess that would be the question that we'd want. So 215 plus 87 plus 86 07 plus 207. Then exhaust fan replacement for 33. That's everything, right? Comes to 459,000 for everything on your list here.
So right now, I would only be recommending doing the ductwork replacement.
Just the ductwork?
Because with the COVID funds, we were able to repair all the mechanicals that were broken in them, and we updated all of the controllers as well.
Okay.
So although these systems are running 20 to 30 years old, we've just updated all of them with new controllers and made sure their mechanical operation is functioning properly.
Okay. So if we make one more quick comment. Sorry. So what I would ask as a board member is just come up with a prioritization list from your perspective about what needs to go first. And then we can have a discussion about where we get the funds, just from my opinion.
I agree with that.
What AC work, I just know there is AC that needs to get done, but that sounds reasonable.
So what do you need something specific from us tonight? I mean, I think that's, our direction is, I think the direction that you're going, just prioritize the list so that we know how to better advise next month.
Yeah.
Yeah, so next month we'll have a memo from Amy and Roger that says this is what our recommendation is and here's how we're going to pay for it.
Perfect.
And we should have a better understanding of what we would need to use for those ESSER funds as well.
Okay. That sounds reasonable. Mr. O'Keefe, Mr. Eckhoff or Ms. Hinckley, did you have any additions?
No, I just, the ductwork is 215. Is that pretty much a solid number for now? I mean, it could go up if we delay.
That's you.
And if you could
Dustin,
help me
did you
out.
have any additions?
I do not.
Okay. Did we have any additional discussion on, I forget where we were, hang on. Right, thank you. Oh, hang on, we need to go back to Roger for a second.
Sorry. So I took it a step further and we'll give you this information next month as well, as we broke the RFP ductwork down into 3 phases. It's important that we replace the ductwork. So I don't want to look at the 215 and change and be like, no, we can't do it this time. So I've asked the vendor to break it down in phases for us that will allow you guys to choose to, whether or not we're all in and we want to break it down in phases.
Thank you.
And then the last thing is in the July update, I included a 5-year plan. Nothing that I'm looking for you guys to approve or just looking for you guys to view that at some point. It includes the entire district. So that's all.
Roger, you know we appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
And the copper does look great. Okay, so we are up to consent agenda item number 6, the student handbook. Mr. O'Keefe, you asked to pull that. You are monopolizing, but we
Using all the
adore you,
oxygen
so
in the
keep
room
going.
today. Can you just talk a little bit about, obviously I know why we're approving it, but what are the changes? What are the highlights without me going through page by page and comparing it to last year's?
Yeah, so Ms. Landworld can speak to it, but essentially we were updating it to match any policy revisions or changes to school procedures that have been made. So it's literally just an update based on policies and procedures.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah, I I first went through and updated all of the school start time information and any of our procedures that we were updating based on the change in our school start and end time for this year. The other big thing is our policies. I added additional references to policies throughout. And the big change is really our approach to behavior and discipline. I pulled a lot directly from our policy as outlined in the work our policy committee did this summer. And I also really focused on that tiered approach to dealing with discipline and really starting with positive and working collaboratively with students to make sure that we're educating them and really looking at how we come up with a plan for each student depending on, you know, what their challenge may have been and how we're really looking not at punishment, but on education through discipline. So there was a pretty significant amount to change to reflect that. I made as many updates as I felt was appropriate to reflect that policy, but I know even in meeting with Tom, I did, I think, a good job. A great job could be done. If I had even more time this summer, I would have wanted to dive even deeper into the handbook. So I think it is a really good start. I feel confident that it fully reflects our policies and aligns well to our policies. But some of the discipline pieces, I would want to work with Tom this year and have him really take the lead on refining some of those pieces for next year. Anything I missed from our discussions about handbook? Okay.
Thank you.
Then before you approve the consent agenda, I wonder if I might offer Principal Lechleiter the opportunity just to provide some updates from his first few weeks on the job, if you wouldn't mind. So if I could put you on the spot, Mr. Lechleiter, no more than 45 or 50 minutes, please, but go right ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Steele, and thank you, school board. It is a pleasure to be here. I have been very warmly welcomed over the past few weeks, and I feel that it is a great honor and privilege to serve this community, to be part of this fantastic school. Throughout the process, it was evident that Mont Vernon Village School truly is the pride and joy of this community. And I look at it as a great responsibility to move this school forward and to continue to make it a place that students, families, and community members look to with great fondness and pride and spirit. Two things happened on the first 2 days on the job. Well, besides the going out there for a couple of days, one of the first tours I had of the school, I realized that a former student of mine is a teacher in the school here, was just hired this year, which is pretty exciting. And then I think it was the next day, one of the PTA members made me aware that her husband is a former student of mine, and it's out there, which makes me feel my age just a bit. So no, but that's very exciting. And it's fun to be part of this small world of education. So a couple of things that I've heard tonight that I can sort of segue into. And the first is sort of what is our theme for the year at Mont Vernon Village School. I've met with many at this point of our staff, and our theme this year is going to be that it takes a village to soar together. We are the mighty falcons of Mont Vernon Village School. And so we are going to bring that mascot more to the center this year, and the theme of soaring. And soaring will stand for showing respect, others first, always safe, and responsible citizens. And as we work with our students this year, that theme will sort of integrate in throughout our classrooms, our hallways, our recess areas, and our multi-purpose room, the cafeteria. Also, through my interview process, I received a lot of feedback from community folks and staff. And really what became evident was three real strong themes. The first is community, which I'd like to sort of take that SOAR theme and really celebrate the community that is Mont Vernon Village School. The second is the mission of engaging, challenging, and supporting each learner. And as I've met with our staff, it is very evident that they truly are passionate about each student in this school and in this community. So I'm excited to bring that mission forward and continue that work forward. And the other piece that I heard tonight is being a responsive school. Our staff are trained in the responsive classroom model, which really is looking at the whole child, which is really looking at the social emotional needs of students. We're in a day and age where that has never been more center in the headlines. And I think it is really important that that is one of our focuses this year. A couple other things that I've been involved with over the first few weeks here. I've had a number of what I've called chats with Tom, where staff have been meeting with me to talk about what makes them proud, what are things they'd like to keep, what are things they'd like to see us improve on, and how I can support them. So I'm getting some really good feedback from those conversations. I also have put a survey out to the community to get some similar feedback, and I'm getting some very positive, authentic, and helpful feedback through that process. So I'm excited about that. I'm excited to use that feedback to move us forward. We also tonight, just before this meeting, had a meet and greet out in the playground area. And it was a nice turnout. I received some really nice feedback there. As I said, a really warm welcome. And it was nice to see folks and students turn out for that tonight. It was nice to meet some of our students. I just wanted to give a couple shout outs. I think Mr. Steele had mentioned our Title I celebration, the end of that program. And I just wanted to recognize Miss Ty, Miss Brown, Miss Galligan, Miss Philbott, Miss Maddie, and Miss Hobson Springer on their work this summer. I apologize if that pronunciation. I share a very difficult last name to pronounce, so I can relate there. But for their work in the Title I program. We had a couple of teachers work on the humanities. Amherst and Mont Vernon teachers got together and did some humanities unit planning that I was very impressed at the work that I saw there a few days ago. And just yesterday, we had our summer reboot. We had a number of staff here: Christina Anderson, Charlene Brown, Anna Gerard, and Maggie Holm, and several students that were very excited to be back, very excited to be here. I'll be honest, they were a little nervous, I think, for the first half hour. And then they were very excited for this year. So that was fun. And finally, I'd just like to put a shout out to our PTA. They have already reached out, we've connected, and we have some exciting plans this year that does include a mascot costume that we're going to bring into the village school this year. I'm told Mr. Steele doesn't mind putting on mascot costumes, so I'm excited about that. And they will be sponsoring a welcome back breakfast for our staff on the first day. So thank you, Mr. Steele.
Thank you for the update and a very warm welcome. We didn't officially get to say welcome to you, but welcome. Any questions about the handbook or any questions for our principal? One question that I had about the handbook is, will there be a contact list in the handbook? Is that something that gets included in the handbook? Yeah, like a staff list. I mean, I see the phone number, the general school phone number at the beginning, and whoa.
I don't know if that was in a previous student handbook. It may have been. We do update our website with a contact list, so I thought it might be most appropriate to have it on the website live so that if any changes needed to be made. So I didn't include it in the handbook, but I certainly can in future versions.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions about the handbook or? Mr. O'Keefe? anything?
Madam Chairperson, this is Pete.
Mrs. Hinckley or Mr. Eckhoff, do you have any questions about the handbook, which is consent agenda item number 6?
I don't. I have a comment that I'll hold for after we vote on the consent agenda.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I will entertain a motion to accept consent agenda items 4, 5, and 6.
I so move.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
A second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Hearing none, let's take a vote.
Clark, yes.
Yes.
Lawrence, yes.
Eckhoff, yes.
Hinckley, yes.
Thank you. Okay, we are you raising your hand? Thank you. We are up to our summer updates, and I know we did hear from Roger about the roof update a little bit. Did you have anything else that you wanted to add? You're good. Okay, great. Thank you. Superintendent Steele, did you have anything that you wanted to add about the summer updates, or shall we move right into the social emotional wellness plans for the year?
All set to move right in.
Okay, thank you.
Let's see. Chris,
Was that my agenda?
all right, forgive us. We did not have this prepared for the meeting and thought each of us had also done it. So that's on me, my mistake, but we will prepare that update and we'll email it to the board in the next couple of days. So apologies for that.
Okay, thank you.
We have made several plans around social emotional wellness this year. We just did not make them into report form for tonight. That's my mistake.
Can I ask, was that about welcoming our remote students back or for all
I
students?
believe it was specifically for the remote students, but also incorporating all of them. It
Okay.
needs to be all.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, I can speak to 2 quick things if that's helpful.
Please.
Or maybe even 3 quick things regarding that, but I apologize, I didn't prepare a memo for this. So first of all, we did hold, as Tom mentioned, our summer reboot program where we invited all of our students that were remote in segments 9 and or 10 back into school to help transition. We spent 3 hours with students, did team building activities, they did a scavenger hunt, and the students had a lot of fun. We had them in grade level groups, like a K2 group, a 3-4 group, a 5-6 group, and they were able to connect with the remote teachers as well as other teachers. Most of the teachers happened to be in the building that day setting up classrooms. So parents were informed that they may not necessarily meet their teachers, but many of them did have an opportunity definitely to see classrooms, and many of them were able to meet their teachers. So as Tom mentioned, the kids were so excited, they didn't want to leave. And so many of them said, oh, we can't wait to come back to school. So it was really positive. It was a great way to help welcome our remote learners back and help transition them. So that was one really positive. The other thing is we have a new school counselor, and we've been able to connect her with the new school counselor down at Clark Wilkins as well. So a really great opportunity through all of our new teacher orientations and trainings. The 2 of them have been able to connect. And we're really revitalizing our second step curriculum. So during guidance time, we use that social and emotional learning curriculum. And Anna has already had a chance to dig into that. We're purchasing some materials that have been lost over the past few years. And they're puppets and cards that went missing. So we're working on that piece and really revitalizing that curriculum and making that stronger connection with Clark Wilkins, and that's school-wide. The other thing is we're looking at using some grant funds. Second Step just came out with an anti-bullying curriculum and a diverse, and it's an anti-bullying and harassment curriculum. So we're looking at possibly purchasing that with some grant funds. So we're waiting on submitting an approval of our grant, but that's something else we're really interested in reconnecting with Second Step.
Great, thank you. Any questions for
The only
Christine?
thing that I respectfully request is maybe as a part of that proposal you're going to give to us is that we craft an executable plan about how to engage students in this building with all the things that you just covered, in addition to the things that we talked about earlier tonight. Have that so it's it's noticed by members of the community so they know how to access the services. Like, hey, I noticed my child is X. I know who to actually call. And most importantly, our outstanding faculty and staff. Hey, so-and-so Sally is having some issues. I'd like to actually refer her to some support services within inside the building. I know that stuff exists already, but just making sure that our faculty and staff are brought up to speed to recognize these new cues and clues that are directly resulting from this COVID crisis. So that's going to be it's going to take some training. And I know you're awesome at this, Christine, but if we can just incorporate that in the overall plan, that would be great.
So it almost sounds like a social emotional cheat sheet.
Yeah, similar concern, something that's a more executionable, something that's like very clear and concise that we can give also to the community so they know that this is being taken seriously and accounted for. And this may be something that's already done, so forgive me if I'm asking like a silly question, but has there already been an evaluation of students that may have already accommodations of those that may struggle more with tactile or mask use? Is there already kind of a plan in place for those students from last year?
Masks, is that? I don't fully understand. It's hard to hear.
Do you mind clarifying?
I'm sorry.
Oh,
It's
my-
hard to hear.
I'm
There's a
so
bad
sorry.
echo. It's actually.
I know that there are students that already do have maybe accommodations or a plan in place for different kinds of needs, like maybe tactile differences or issues that masks may cause. Were there already plans from last year in place to make the mask wearing situation as helpful as possible for those students, or is that something that needs to be developed more?
So from last year, certainly there were plans around, mask breaks and how often students should be getting mask breaks. And we did institute a plan last year. It's definitely something I'm sure Tom will probably connect with staff on opening day to just review and reinforce and make any adjustments that might be needed. We have our in-service day Friday and then our opening day on Monday, and there's staff meeting time on Monday just to finalize some of those processes and procedures. As far as individual students, absolutely, it really ties in with our mask policy and the ability to make adjustments for individual students as needed.
Thank you. Okay, so we'll let you off the hook this time.
No, it
Let
was.
you off the hook, but we'd like a wonderful update next time. Maybe with graphics, a chart. Thank you. Tom, I just had one quick question for you. How is your survey going? Are you getting responses to your survey that was in your newsletter? I saw that.
Yes, I am getting responses. One thing I plan to do right now is on our Facebook page, we are going to put it out as an email to our parent community as well, so they get it directly. So I'm hoping for more responses.
Excellent. I almost responded, but
Yeah,
you didn't have a category for me. It was great.
I can add one.
No, it's okay. I thought it was wonderful. And I hope you get great responses.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, did we have any questions about any of the summer updates? I know Roger came up before, but I don't want to move through this if we have anything else for him. Okay, and anything else for Adam or the team? No? Okay, great. Superintendent Steele, anything else from your perspective?
All set, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. So we are up to public input time 2 of 2. So I would invite any members of the public, if you would like to speak, you can approach the microphone, state your name, the town that you live in, which I know that the two of you both live here. So if you have any comments, we would be open to hearing you at this time. No?
I want to
Yes.
thank the both of you guys for staying.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Madam Chair, if I could have a minute.
Just wanted to tell all the kids and people of Mont Vernon, you've got an awesome principal. He is Craig tested, Craig approved. So you can't do much better than that as a middle school English teacher. So sorry for everything and glad to have you.
Thank you. Okay, I do believe that we have a non-public session this evening.
It's up to the board. There are 3 nominations I'm ready to make. I'm happy to make them in public if there are no questions, but if there are questions, we can certainly go into non-public.
I don't think I had questions.
Madam Chair, could I have a minute or two? Sarah, can you hear me? Madam Chair, are you able to hear me?
Sarah?
It sounds like we need a quick non-public, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so I need a motion to,
Oh, I'm sorry.
there's
Mr.
a
Eckhoff.
question. Oh, sorry, thank you.
Go ahead, Mr. Eckhoff.
Okay, sorry, there was, technology problems. I just had a thought and just some insight into my suggestion to the board and the district about outside classrooms. But my first thought when Principal Tom was talking about the year of the soaring and the Falcon and everything is just a thought. Maybe you could encourage and we could have a contest amongst K through 6 students to develop a design for T-shirts that students could wear and community members, teachers, and parents could buy. Maybe use it as a fundraiser. Maybe we narrow it down to 2, maybe 3 designs, and we could get those printed and kids be able to wear the T-shirts at school on certain days or something like that. But it may be something that would engage the students into a positive practice in the first month of school to come up with the design. So just a thought on that.
Yeah, thank you for that. I've actually already had conversations with Ms. Ty, and I was stopped in the hallway just yesterday by the art teacher who has a design already mocked up. I did not ask for that, but it's already mocked up. And so the wheels are moving quick. We also will need to name our Falcon. So that will be a future contest happening. And so I look forward to giving you updates on how this rolls out. And I completely agree. This is a great thing to rally around and build school spirit around. The sooner the better this year so that we can use it throughout the year. Thank you.
Overwhelming consensus at our summer gala, the name of the Falcon should be called Mr. Stuffy McFalconhead.
Are you willing to make a motion on that, Mr.
No
O'Keefe?
comment.
Okay.
I just wanted to, if I could,
I think
Madam
we've got
Chair, just
another
real
comment
quick.
from Mr. Eckhoff.
Yeah, just real quick, if I could, on the outdoor learning areas, is my intent was that we try to build some permanent, not structures, but permanent areas that are roofed in case of rain, but also are more class-like than just going outside and sitting on a blanket or sitting on the grass or just hanging out outside for a classroom. If we could develop some, roofed-in areas that would accommodate 20 to 22 students and teachers or teacher, and have that space designated for outdoor classroom time, I think that would be important. And I'm going to loop Roger in on this conversation too, is I've got to believe that given the situation of the last 18 months with COVID, that there might be a manufacturer out there that has developed, I won't say desks, but chairs and certain structures that are designed to be used in outside learning scenarios. So I would ask Roger maybe to investigate whether there's some sources for that kind of thing. And again, I know we're on a limited budget. We've had unexpected expenses this year, but as we move forward with this, I don't want this to be just a pop-up tent with a couple of folding chairs. That's not my intent at all. I think it should be something very permanent, very resourceful, and very conducive to learning, even though the children and the teacher are going to be outside. That was my intent of the email and my thought process on outside education.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Eckhoff. We actually, before you jumped on, talked about your thought, and Amy and Roger are going to report, I'm sorry, Roger and Tom are going to report back next board meeting on their investigations, but what you just added was helpful for them in their work. So thank you for that.
Okay, thank you. So I do believe that we are at our non-public time. So can I have a motion to enter non-public? I think it's RSA 91A 3, 2,
A and C.
A and C.
I make a motion to move into non-public under RSA 91A 3, 2, A, and C.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I second that.
Let's do a roll call vote.
Park, yes.
O'Keefe, yes.
Lawrence, yes.
Hinckley,
Eckhoff,
yes.
yes.
Thank you. So we are going to go ahead and enter non-public at 7:59.